What up, guys? It's your boy here, Judah Yugi, giving you another Yu-Gi-Oh! Arc V podcast discussion with a fellow YouTuber. Please introduce yourself.
Hey guys, I'm Dylan from Clueless Gamers or Yu-Gi-Oh! Everything. It's great to be on again. Thank you for having me once again, Legendary Duels.
Of course, anytime. So, yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed our last podcast discussion. It was very fun to do. What did we speak about again? Kind of
Well,
blanking right now.
mainly the spoilers, Yugo and
Right.
Rin, Kaido and Rory.
Yeah. All our predictions on what that's going to be and, whether or not Yu-Gi-Oh's going to be evil. So you guys should definitely go ahead and watch that podcast. It was very interesting. A lot of good predictions back and forth. So at this point, I wouldn't be surprised if all of your predictions most of your predictions come true, just because I feel like RV at this moment is they're pretty much throwing curveballs all the time at this point, and they're pretty much like any piece of logic you could kind of find to figure out what's going to happen. They're kind of just throwing it out the window and just saying, hey, you know what? We'll just throw a couple plot twists in here. So I honestly think that your theory might just come true, just because I honestly feel kind of overwhelmed with all the plot twists RV keeps throwing at me. And every time I keep using logic and other episodes and like different interactions and stuff to come up with some stuff, I'm just so confused. And I'm just like, you know what? I almost feel like giving up. I'm like, all right, I'm done predicting, but I gotta keep doing this because it's just I keep getting like, it's just so awkward for me. But yeah, so they keep throwing a lot of plot twists, which is good. So I wouldn't be surprised if your plot twist came true at all at this point, or any other future ones, just because you're a little bit more daring with your predictions, while
Right.
I'm a little safe. I usually like to go by what's already been provided, all the facts, and then I determine what's the best possible outcome that's most likely to happen. And I usually don't go to the more obscure ones because I like to go by facts, I guess, but apparently facts matter nothing here.
Well, yeah, it's what they're doing is they're making a show, as you say, with all these different plot holes, or not plot holes, but plot twists. And when you look back at it, I think a lot of them are going to be like, oh, I should have seen that coming, or oh man, they kind of hinted at that, in episode 40 or whatever. But yeah, at this point, they've just done so many different plot twists that making these obscene, crazy predictions that like Rin and Yugo are going to fight for Academia, like that's my new one. You can't really, and all the comments that I get, and I'm sure all the comments that you get about different fan theories, you can't really disparage any fan theory at this point because of how this show has gone. It's just a very, very difficult show to predict, which is a reason why I really am enjoying it.
Of course, yeah, definitely. It's really keeping us on our toes and making us really double guess ourselves and think about, what could possibly happen, and then goes down the toilet. But yeah, so we're gonna have a really fun discussion for you guys today. It's gonna be three topics we're gonna discuss. One mini small one that we're gonna start with, and then two somewhat. Yeah, the last one is pretty big. We're gonna talk about our predictions for more or less, I guess, the end of Arc V and stuff. But let's start with the first question. The first question that I have, it's not really a question. It's more like, well, kind of a question. All right. So the question is, who is Akaba Reiji's ace monster? And I've been thinking about this a lot. Obviously, he's one of my favorite characters, so I've been like waiting. Every time I see a rival from any of the Yu-Gi-Oh series, they always describe one of their monsters as their ace, and we know that that's their defining monster that represents them and who they are, and like even Kaito, he has Galaxy Eyes. We have Jack, who has Red Dragon Archfiend. We have Zane with Cyber and Dragon, and Kaiba, Blue Eyes, and Chaz. He has like three different aces depending on what he's going for at the time. And yeah, but Reiji, although he's summoned many extremely powerful monsters throughout the series, some really overwhelming monsters throughout the series. Because recently, earlier today, I just had watched the Yuya versus Reiji duel, both of them, and holy, he's just, his cards are just too much. But yeah, so, but we haven't seen his ace, and I'm kind of really anticipating it, and I really want to see it, and I would kind of be disappointed if Arc V didn't give him an iconic ace that we can represent him as. And I know at this point people are like, oh, well, maybe Hell Armageddon is his ace. I mean, he has three of them, just like Kaiba has three Blue Eyes. But I mean, he hasn't said it's his ace, and on top of that, the stats don't really match. Armageddon has 3,000 attack and I think 1,000 defense, which is not usually how the iconic rival goes. It's 3,000 attack or 2,000 or 2,500 defense. That's usually how it goes, but it's always 3,000 attack and over 2,000 or more defense is what I usually notice with ace monsters typically. Zen is a different case because he didn't even have a 3,000 hitter. He wasn't really the rival. It was actually Chaz, or Manjome. But yeah, so I have an idea of who I think of what could possibly be his ace, and this goes back to episode 21 of Arc V, a way throwback episode, and I've never forgotten this scene because it was actually one of my favorite scenes in Arc V, even though it was very small. And the episode started off. You probably remember this, Dylan. Maybe in episode 21, he started. It started off with the DDD theme, and then you see Reiji summoning his pendulum scales, and he's kind of like in his laboratory room or whatever, and he's testing out his pendulum monsters, and he pendulum summons the 3 Hell Armageddons. Do you remember that scene?
Yes, I do remember that. Yes.
Yes. So that scene was really cool, and it seems that he was going to do something really big at that moment. There was the cool scene where he was imagining himself dueling Yuya with his odd eyes, and he was getting really kind of like, not hesitant, but really kind of excited in his own way of expressing. And he was about to do something, and he took his hand and he was about to grab the last card that was in his hand. And then obviously he was stopped by one of his workers, and they said that the test was successful and he mastered that the pendulum monsters were perfected. And then he took like this deep breath, like he had to calm down because he was about to like lose it right there. Not like like he was about to go evil or anything like that, but he was about to like really go off and kind of like summon something really big that we haven't seen before. And I think whatever that card is that card that's in his hand has something to do with what his ace could possibly be. And that's kind of my theory, I guess. Yeah, I guess it's kind of a theory as to what could possibly be his ace. It could be. My first initial thought is, what could that card be in his hand, and how does that relate to his ace? And I thought at first that it could be the polymerization spell card to fuse his 3 DDD Hell Armageddons to fuse a new monster that obviously is a fusion of those Hell Armageddons, and that's what I think it could be. Another secondary option could be another DDD monster that requires 3 DDD tributes in order to summon it, or it could be possibly it could have been a card from his extra deck in his hand that he was about to summon. He could overlay all 3 of them since they're all level 8s, obviously, and summon whatever it is. So those are 3 different possibilities as to what his ace could possibly be. I honestly think that scene was very important and is going to play a role later on. Since obviously we haven't seen a lot of Akaba Reiji dueling in general, I feel like they're saving him for something really huge. And we haven't seen his ace either, which is a little strange by this point. Over 100 episodes into RGV, we should have already seen it, and he hasn't had many duels. So clearly, whatever he was about to do at that moment is going to play a role later on. He held back. He didn't show. The writers obviously didn't show the fans because they didn't want us to see it just yet. They're saving it for something huge, and I think that could possibly be his ace monster that he's going to summon, and it's going to have some really strong effect that's going to be really defining in a later duel in Arc V in one of the final battles. So, and also, I don't think it's that you remember that fusion that he used against Roger, DDD, King Beowulf, whatever that one. At first, I thought that was his ace for a while before that, because they had released that card a long time ago. And I'm like, I told my friends, I'm betting it has 3,000 attack, 2,500 defense. It has the exact stats for its level A. It's a fusion of a DDD and a DD monster. So I was like, this has to be it. But when he summoned it against Roger, it was kind of underwhelming. They didn't animate it as great, and he didn't say the classic words, which is Waka Tamashi, and he didn't make it seem that special. So that's what makes me think that's not his ace, because he didn't really give any symbols
right
as to why that was his ace or anything. He just summoned it like it was another powerful DDD monster. Let me go in, pierce, attack, and the duel. Like it didn't really come across as how it usually does when they summon their ace. So Dylan, why don't you share with me your thoughts on that?
Well, it's interesting that you bring that up. I actually forgot about that and that scene where he was, about to summon something, and then until you just brought it up that he was practicing pendulum summoning. And another possibility that I think you maybe might have missed on is what if it was a ritual card that was in his hand? When you use ritual cards, do you need the monster to be in your hand as well? Like, do you need the spell card that is the
Yes.
ritual? Oh, so you do. Okay, so then it can't be ritual. Okay. Um,
The ritual spell card in your hand to do it. So yeah, that yeah.
Okay, right. So you need at least two cards. Okay, so then that's fair. That's what I thought. I just wanted to double
Yeah,
check
that
that.
would be good if he had another card for sure in his hand. But that was like the last card in his hand, so
Right. So I know all the people out there that want to say ritual dimension, well, I mean, I guess I was feeding into that a little bit, but yeah,
yeah.
but yeah. So it's definitely interesting. My issue with this whole ace monster concept is Kaido had Kaido had, I believe, about 14 duels. Jack Atlas had about 30 duels. Manjome had at least 10. Marufuji had at least 7 or 8. Reiji, I don't think is gonna have. I think Reiji, when it's all said and done, is going to have his two one-on-one duels against Yuya, his one-on-one duel against Roger, and I think those have really been
Yeah.
his only three one-on-one duels, right?
Oh, and he dueled Barrett once.
That's right. He did dual Barra. That's right. So,
Four, yeah.
right, he's dueled four times in the first 114 episodes, and there's only like 30 episodes left. So at this rate, he's only going to duel once more. And is he really going to have his ace monster come out in that one duel, and is he going to make a big deal out of it? I'm really not sure about that. Now, to the very first point you make, all these characters need to have an ace monster, and I kind of agree with that. And I wonder if they're just gonna have Reiji as a character who just has all these really strong, powerful DDD monsters and isn't going to really have one standout monster. It would be weird kind of looking back at it and saying, yeah, these are all their ace monsters and oh, who's that guy's ace monster. You try to explain it to someone who hasn't watched the animes and it's like, yeah, well, he doesn't really have one. Like they've never done that before with a character. So on one part of me feels they won't do that, but on another part, I just feel they don't have enough time to give him this iconic monster, and maybe they're trying to portray Reiji as this duelist who is so good that he doesn't need to rely on one monster. And I think that's kind of the feeling that they're trying to portray with him, that he has all these different monsters at his arsenal, and he's such a talented duelist that, he can summon a fusion DDD monster, a synchro DDD monster, an Xyz DDD monster, and then, ritual summon or pendulum summon or, whatever summon. He can do it all. And I think that's kind of the modus operandum that they're trying to give Reiji. So, I don't really know if they are going to have enough time to give him an iconic monster, but it does make me think, what is that monster that he was getting really excited and about to summon? Maybe it was Obelisk the Tormentor. I guess time will tell.
That scene highly resembled Kaiba training to fight against. Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I thought of. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, but that's just kind of food for thought for people, for the fans. Definitely the fans. Please write down in the comment section below. Do you think that scene has any relevance? Do you think we'll ever see a true identified ace monster for Akaba Reiji? Once again, this was a small discussion, but that's pretty much the only scene that I have proof as to maybe, even if it's not his ace monster, clearly he was going to do something. He held back from doing something, and I think that's still going to play a role later on. Whether it's his ace or not, I still think whatever card he was going to use there is going to play a role later. And if you really think about it throughout the series, that moment when he summoned all three of those DDD monsters, that's the only time in the series. After that, he dueled two more times after that, but he's never had those three specific monsters on the field since then, which is three Hell Armageddons. It's like, all right, well, we haven't seen those three on the field at the same time. Maybe they're planning on redoing this scene, because I mean, why take out the time to kind of show this scene, showing him kind of holding back something as if there's something great in store, and then do nothing with it. On top of that, I actually finished watching the first duel with Yuya and Reiji, and their duel got interrupted, and he was about to show something to Yuya before the duel got interrupted. So that's another situation. Before That was before episode 21 when he was doing Yuya, and he was holding back for something. He was going to show him something, and then he got cut off because there was an incident that happened. So it's like, all right, we got two situations where he was about to go all out. Both times, one time he was imagining doing Yuya, the other time he actually was, and it's like, what were you gonna do during those times? And ironically, during those three times, the Hell Armageddons were on the field the first time he dueled Yuya too. I mean, one of them was destroyed already, and the other two were destroyed because the scales got messed up. But he probably had some way of bringing it back. Also, there was a card set face down at the end of that duel that he did not activate. He had like this smile or this smirk on his face when he thought of that card, as if he has something figured out that he's gonna do, and then he was gonna do something, and then obviously it got into. So I'm like, there's too much suspicion there. I feel like they even if it's not his ace, they gotta bring whatever he was hiding at some point later, because that's two instances already when he either held back or got interrupted from doing something really huge that we haven't seen yet. So yeah.
Yeah, it's I actually just re-saw that scene too because Reiji Akaba, who posts all those like funny sub videos, I don't know if I'm sure you've probably seen him.
It's fun, yeah.
Yeah, he's hilarious, and he posted because apparently he's on the cast list for 115. It could be a flashback, but I guess we'll see. Or is it 115? No, it's 115. Yeah, next week's episode. Yeah. And he made a funny subs video like he always does, and I think he used that scene where Reiji was about to summon a monster. Was it going to be that same monster that he summoned in training? Maybe, maybe not. But I'm worried this might be something that never really gets resolved just because of the time restraints on the show. There always seems to be a few things in Yu-Gi-Oh that just never end up getting resolved, and it's just kind of left like, well, why did that even happen? So I'm worried that's going to be the case here, but I guess time will tell.
Yeah. All right. Well, that's the first discussion. You guys could write down in the comment section below what you thought about it. What do you think about the potential of his ace, or what do you think could possibly be that was in his hand, or that he was holding back? What could he possibly have left to hold back at this point? Obviously, we know he's still stronger than this, which is ridiculous, but he has more in store clearly. So we'll see what happens with that, but we'd love to hear what you guys think. So we're going to move on to our second discussion, which is a bit of a bigger discussion. This discussion is, the question is going to be, another topic on Akaba Reiji, will Akaba Reiji remain undefeated throughout the entire series? And I guess we could start off by saying, Dylan, why don't you tell me, do you think Reiji will remain undefeated throughout the entire Arc V series?
Okay, well, when you sent me this topic, the first thing I noticed, as I'm sure you know as well, is he didn't lose, but he technically did lose to Yuya the first time they dueled. I know he didn't, the real question here is, will his life points drop to 0? Will he actually legitimately lose a duel without surrendering? Because when he dueled Yuya the first time they dueled, he did lose, but he didn't actually lose. I think he had the duel won. As you say, he had a face down card, and he was about to summon a monster. I think he had that duel won. I think it's pretty hard to argue that he wasn't going to win that duel, but technically he did lose. So here's my thing. I don't think that he is going to lose the rest of the show. I think he might have one more duel left in store, and that could be against his father. And, another situation where maybe he loses is if I think him and Yuya are going to end up tag dueling against Leo Akaba. That's what I'm starting to believe. And I think that maybe after they defeat Leo, the true villain comes out, and maybe it is that darkness within Yuya, or it's the Berserk mode Yuya. Reiji tries to duel against Yuya, or that darkness, because Yuya's maybe unconscious, or he's being just possessed, and Reiji can't get through to him, and the darkness and the possessed Berserk Yuya actually defeats Reiji and kills off Reiji. I think that would be kind of interesting. That's the only way I really see Reiji losing a duel legitimately, and then maybe, then that's when Yuzu has to come in, and maybe Yuzu's the one to get through to him in a duel, in like a 4-on-4 duel with all the girls and boys. But I know we're going to discuss our thoughts on the ending, so I'll get more into detail on that later. But I really, Reiji has lost. He's lost to Yuya. It wasn't legitimately, but I look back at the rival from last series, and it's Kaido, and Kaido lost one duel, and he lost to Vetrix, or Tron, and that was the only duel that he lost. And so for a rival to go the whole show only losing once is not it's not unheard of. I mean, I know Jack Atlas lost like 7 times. He lost a lot for a main rival character, but I think Reiji maybe is going to lose legitimately once because he's already technically lost, so it's not like he went undefeated the whole show. But I don't think he's going to lose to his dad. So I'm really not sure. If I had to bet money on whether Reiji Akaba was going to lose a duel legitimately by his life points hitting 0, I would actually bet money that he is not going to lose a duel legitimately the entire show. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on that. Another potential is maybe he would duel Rira if Rira is maybe a sleeper agent, and maybe Rira would beat him. I don't know if I'd like that because I think that's kind of hard to picture. I know Rira is a good duelist, and I guess it would kind of make sense, but that's just another food for thought kind of topic. But again, if I had to pick one side, I would probably prefer, or not prefer, but I would assume that Reiji is not going to lose by the time this show ends.
Of course. Yeah, I have a lot of thoughts on whether or not Reiji would lose in the end or not. Uh, I do think he would remain undefeated, except to probably Yuya at the very end of the series, if they do have that final duel between Yuya and Reiji, where we clearly in episode 21, as we saw, he really wants to duel Yuya at his fullest. I'm pretty sure. So once the series is over, he's going to be at his max potential, I suppose. So I'm sure he wants to have that final duel with Yuya at some point because he respects Yuya a lot, very much so, and I'm pretty sure he wants to have that duel. It's been hinted on several times, I feel, and yeah, so I definitely want to see that. So that might be the only time that he might lose, because that way we could finally see Yuya actually win and actually take him to 0 life points, which is what he got really close in that second match. Yuya went all out in that second match. He did a fantastic job, but obviously Reiji was still too powerful, which is why he joined the Lancers in the first place, was so he could get stronger. So by the end of it, I'm sure he'll be strong enough to, defeat Akaba Reiji. Obviously this is after, the whole final fight and everything,
Right, right.
ceremonial duels that they usually have at the end. I'm pretty sure it's going to be between Reiji and Yuya. But so I do think that if Reiji does lose, unlike you, I feel like if he were to lose to anybody, it would be his father. Although I don't want him to lose to his father because I don't feel like that would make any sense. Just because of the simple fact that this is his entire purpose in the show is to defeat his father. And we know he's incredibly strong and he's been, gathered up Lancers and everything just for the sake and purpose of defeating his father. So I doubt that someone with that kind of ambition and strive and everything he's done up until this point in the series would just all go in vain and he would just lose to his father. It would be kind of dramatic and intense if that were to be the case, but it wouldn't make any sense because, Reiji has up until this point been idolized as this extremely broken prodigy character. So I honestly don't see him losing at this point. So it would be kind of surprising if he did, but obviously for plot twist purposes, if he were to lose to anybody, it would make sense if it was his father, if everything he worked for up until this point, he still wasn't strong enough to defeat him. That would be kind of cool, but I still don't think it's going to happen. And once we get to the third part of the conversation, I'll discuss further in detail with all of that. But yeah, that's who I think he would probably lose to if he loses to anybody at all in the series. But most likely he's gonna duel with Yuya, and that's gonna be the case. But we'll see what happens with that. Let's just move on to the third part of the conversation, which is who will face Akaba Leo at the end. So this is kind of like what I have so far. So, with some interesting developments, these are two different options that could happen.
All right.
That could possibly happen. And before I get to who's going to face him at the end, I have to say, if there is a duel before the final duel with Akaba Leo, there's two options that I think could possibly be, personally, that I think Akaba Leo could duel before, he does his final duel with whoever he does it with. So I have two options, and depending on those two options could depend on who faces him last. So it's kind of all connected. So the first option that I have here is Yusho actually ends up doing Akaba Leo first before Yuya gets injured, because we know the main villain has to lose to the main character at some point, obviously. So I have a feeling that maybe Yusho will lose that duel, even though I don't want him to lose because that also wouldn't make any sense because they've also been building him up for for something like this amazing duelist that we still have not yet seen duel. So that's that. And as we know, Yusho has that kind of leg injury, like he's really messed up. So maybe throughout the duel while he's dueling, it really gets really severe. And I have a feeling that if Yusho does lose that duel, it's not going to be because he wasn't strong enough. I think it's going to be because he's not able to duel anymore. I think it's going to be more of a cop out situation where they've clearly been building up this injury, so he still has this injury. So probably when he tries to face off against, he's going to try and talk to Akaba first, try to see what's going on, and then once he's not listening, he'll duel him, try to show him entertainment, dueling and all this stuff, try to show him what they've been working for so long. And then obviously his injury gets to him, and he's not able to continue the duel, or he ends up getting hurt, falling, and then he can't make his move, and then Leo finishes him off. Because I don't see Yusho legitimately losing to Leo, but I don't see Yusho also defeating Leo either, because that's obviously the main character's role in the end. So that's the first option. So Yusho might face him first, and he might lose because of some stupid technicality. And then after that, that's when Reiji and Yuya come in and they duel Akaba. So that's one scenario. Second scenario could be that Reiji duels him. I don't know where Yusho would fit into this. Oh yeah, right here. So Reiji would duel him first. And then he would lose. He wasn't strong enough to defeat his own father, and then that's when Yuya and Yusho come in, father and son, and they go off against Cabaleo. So that's another option right there. And then the final kind of dream battle, which probably won't happen because Yu-Gi-Oh! In general doesn't really do this that often. And that would be the duel Yuya, Reiji, and Yusho versus Akaba, a 3v1 with the three strongest duelists versus the main villain, and that would be fantastic. But that's kind of like one of those things that it sounds too good to be true. So that's like another option. The reason why I don't have Yuya dueling Akaba first is because I honestly don't see him dueling him alone. I feel like he'd either have Reiji by his side or somebody else by his side, unless he's already fused with the four other Yuyas and can control it. And then maybe I could see him facing off against Akaba by himself and finishing it off. But I honestly see him partnering up with most likely Reiji. That's my number one guess. Partner up with Reiji and duel against Akaba. So yeah, that's what I think is pretty much going to happen. I don't think you're just gonna face him alone necessarily. There was another point I had. I can't seem to remember it. If I remember it later, I'll just mention it. But yeah, what are your thoughts on those three options? What do you think about all this?
I like Leo versus Yusho. I think that's actually something that should happen. I don't want Leo to duel once and lose, so I think that should happen. I would be the only time they've really done a 3-on-1 duel with that kind of magnitude was when they dueled Dr. Faker, Kaido, Shark, and Yuma. That's the only one that I can think of. I'm sure they've done other. Actually, I don't know if they have. 3-on-1 duels, as you already said, are rare. They did it in Zexal, so maybe they'll do it here, but I would be shocked. I think that.
Yeah, my other point too. That the point that I actually forgot that in Zexal, we know basically that since Zexal they've been changing up the writing of how they defeat final villains. In they defeated Dr. Faker, it was a 3v1, and it was a 2v1 against Don 1000, and then technically Nosh was the final boss, but technically speaking, Don 1000 was supposed to be the final boss, and it was still a 2v1. So clearly they don't want to do the same thing that they've done with the past series, where you say the main character, Judai, Yugi, they always had to defeat the main boss by themselves. Clearly since Zexal they've been changing that and realized that sometimes it's okay to have the main character have some sort of assistance during the duel. So clearly that's what makes me think that it's more than likely that there will be a 2v1 or a 3v1 against Akaba. So yeah.
Right. Well, in Duel Monsters, you did have Yugi and Kaiba versus Darts. I know that was more of a filler arc. And then in GX, you had Johan and Judai versus Marcel, which was controlled by Yubel during season 3. And then in 5Ds you had Yusei, Jack, and Crow versus Godwin. So they have done it in the previous shows, but right, not, they all had their one-on-one duels. Zexal never really had a one-on-one duel, good versus evil. The one that I really like is Yuya and Reiji versus Leo. I think that's something that really could happen, and that's what I'm leaning towards. And what I think might happen in the middle of that is similar to what happened when Yugi and Kaiba teamed up, where Leo is going to defeat Reiji. I think that's possible, even though, at the same time, I think Reiji is going to remain undefeated. I don't think he's going to lose in that setting. But, I mean, I guess it would be still considered a win. Usually, from an analytical point of view, if your team wins, you win. Like, I would say Johan and Judai defeated Fujiwara in Season 4. I wouldn't say, yeah, Johan lost, but Jaden won. I'd say they both won. So, that could be kind of a plot hole where you have Reiji die and maybe have this emotional moment where he gets carded or gets killed, and then Yuya has to finish Rio off. But at the same time, Reiji technically didn't lose because his team won, so that could be a little plot hole there. That's honestly a direction that I think they're going in. I'm not sure if Yuya and Yusho will team up. I feel like Yuya might even see Yusho get carded by Leo, and that's going to start the duel, and that'll be like the first time Yuya and Yusho come across each other. And that maybe is going to trigger Berserk mode, and then, this whole, Arc Area project is going to kind of spiral out of control and take precedence. I'm not really sure. The ending is so tough to predict because there's so many variables. You have this darkness within Yuya that clearly has some tie to all this. That's probably the final villain. A bunch of people don't even think that Leo is evil, that Leo is doing this for, valiant purposes, similar to what Zone was doing. And, even the girls, if the 4 girls are this, goddess of creation, and the 4 boys are the goddess of destruction, or the gods of destruction, which was a theory that I got in the Q&A, which I guess kind of makes sense, then the girls, if they're brainwashed and possessed, might even be a final boss, or all the Berserk U-boys might be a final boss. So there's just so many routes this can go in, but in terms of Leo Akaba, I would love to see, and I think they're leaning towards a Reiji and Yuya duel against him, because Reiji has to duel him at some point, and a one-on-one duel, I would love to see it, but I think a one-on-one duel, I mean, they've never had a side character, or not the main character, I should say, defeat the villain, a major antagonist. Even though I guess you could say Reiji did defeat Roger, so, Reiji is just that kind of character that maybe they'll give him the responsibility of defeating Leo Akaba. I wouldn't mind it, but I feel like the main protagonist is the one who has to kind of resolve the entire thing. So maybe Reiji defeats Leo, the true villain shows up, and that's who Yuya has to defeat. That's another option as well. But at some point, I would bet a lot of money that Reiji and Rio, son versus father, they have to verse at some point during this final arc.
Yes, definitely. I agree. I definitely think Yuya and Reiji versus Akaba Leo is definitely the most likely option because it just makes the most sense. Yeah, they've been leading up to it. We've kind of felt it. And, I think Yusho losing first, and then Yuya and Reiji taking place, and then Yuya kind of goes a little crazy, and he's kind of triggered at that point. So I definitely think that's the more likely situation as well. And then those other 2 ones, you guys in the comment section below can write down whether or not you think one of those others are true, or if you think it's something completely different. We'd love to hear what you guys think. I definitely think that in regards to Reiji losing, I don't think Reiji would lose to his father. I know I put that down as he could possibly lose, but that's one of those off chances because, like I said, it doesn't make any sense. This is his whole purpose. I don't think he would just not be able to defeat his own father. If he's doing him alone, I just don't see him losing regardless to his father. And that would feel kind of just awkward for me in general. That'd be like a bad taste in my mouth. It would be cool, but it would just be wrong because it just like counter everything that he's been working for. I don't see him losing to Akaba Leo, and the thing is, we haven't really seen a really big important duel with Akaba Reiji. We've seen him duel 4 times. I don't count the Roger duel as a big duel. I'm sorry, because that was too easy. That was barely like he struggled harder against Yuya. I know he's the main character, but even so, he was supposed to be the main final villain of that arc, and we all agree that was pretty much a big, huge letdown with how it ended with Roger. and I was really hoping that he would do more to kind of redeem himself as a duelist, not like turn good, but redeem himself as a duelist, and say, hey, you know what, I'm gonna give you my ultimate. But he didn't do much, and Reiji was too smart for him, and it was kind of it was a very lackluster duel in my personal opinion. I didn't like it. It was just too easy, and I don't feel like that really shows Akaba Reiji's strength. I felt like he struggled harder in other situations than that, and that was very disappointing. But anyway, he hasn't had many major important duels throughout the series, and that's kind of the reason why I don't think he's going to lose to his father, because he hasn't really had that defining moment. Because some people, I don't know how many people, but maybe there are some people out there who complain that Akaba Reiji has been undefeated up until this point, and he seems kind of like this broken character that just can't be defeated. But at the same time, we haven't really seen him being challenged to the fullest of his extent. Clearly he has a lot of power, and we haven't had any major important duels in the series where he had to face like a really big final boss and defeated that final boss to show his strength. And then he faces his father, and then he loses against him. That would be the only scenario in which I would think that he would actually lose against his father, is if the audience, us, has actually seen another moment in the show where Reiji actually showed a massive amount of strength during a duel to try to overcome a really powerful enemy. So since he hasn't had a big major duel in this, that's why I kind of don't think that Reiji would lose to his father, because it doesn't make sense and there's not enough time. And I don't know who Reiji would face at this point in the series other than his father, because everybody else is pretty much out of his league. So there'd be nobody to test his strength other than his father at this point, and he hasn't faced any major villains. So yeah, only if he had faced a major villain in a prior arc. Rogers doesn't really count because that was far too easy. Only if he faced somebody in the prior arc, then I could see him losing to his father. But yeah, so that's kind of how I feel about that. Kind of jumbled up a bit, but yeah.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. Yeah, it'll be interesting because Reiji, there's just, as you said, is there enough time for him to, and who's he going to duel? The problem is there's 30 episodes left. This was a show that really should have went like 180, 190 episodes. You have a lot of great characters. We haven't seen Yuri really duel anyone of no, he had that duel against Yugo that lasted about 2 turns. We haven't seen Ruri or Rin yet. We haven't even seen them yet in live action. We haven't seen Yuzu duel in so long. We haven't seen Reiji duel. He dueled in episode 99, but after that, it's Barrett, and that was like, or Yuya in episode 50. He duels once every like 30, 40 episodes. And we just, even Asuka and even Edo, they have so many characters. This was a show that really should have went longer than it's going, because right now there's 30 episodes left. If there was like 180, 190 episodes left, you could really make a lot of interesting duels happen. And I'm not saying that there won't be interesting duels, but there's going to be some characters that get kind of stiffed. And I just have a weird feeling that Reiji, when you look back on it, you're going to say, oh man, I just wish he dueled more. And even like someone like Yuri, I think it could be similar. He might only have one duel, Yuri, where he duels Yugo, and then maybe he'll duel Yuya, and then he'll lose, and that's it. And, I just wish characters had more time to duel, but again, I guess it just goes to the typical Yu-Gi-Oh! Timeline, where it's only 145 episodes, and it lasts 3 years, and that's that.
Yeah, unfortunately, we're gonna see some. I mean, which is kind of sucks because, Shun dueled so many times. And
I know.
He's not even the main rival. It's Reiji. He's the big boss. And yeah, obviously I know they're saving him for something huge. Obviously the duel with his father and possibly a final duel with Yuya. Hopefully that does happen. That way he has one more duel on his record, and we could see. I just want to see him duel more because it's kind of a shame. I wish we could see him more in general, but. Yeah, so Shun has dueled a ridiculous amount of times. I mean, any one of those duels, he could have probably, given that screen time to somebody else. And Kaito, he had a couple. He's been revealed recently, and he has had already a lot of duels, defeated pretty much everybody. Once again, he's still undefeated even in Arc V. So it's like all these certain characters are getting a lot of respect, a lot of screen time. But then the main characters that actually matter, which is Reiji, um, which is the main rival. How are you gonna give more attention to Kaito than Reiji? You know, it's like this is their show. They're kind of like guest stars in someone else's show. So why are they getting so much spotlight? But you know, it's like it is what it is, I guess.
Yeah, that's what it is. Yeah, it's definitely a shame. I mean, I love Kaido, and I love his character even in this show, and I know you do too. I know you're a massive Zexal fan, but it's like, we saw him shine in Zexal, and I love these cameos, I really do. But I'd love to see, I would have much rather seen Yusho or Reiji or even Asuka, who we haven't seen duel Dennis, but instead it's Kaido. And
Yeah,
Kaido's already had like 4 or 5 duels at this point. So, they favor more characters. They favor some characters more than others. Not sure why, but it's just it's always been that way really with Yu-Gi-Oh.
yeah, I know. And regarding the whole Asuka thing, yeah, it's a shame. You know, they brought her in for what? She hasn't done anything, like you've said in your previous videos. Like she hasn't done anything, and this could have been the perfect opportunity. She could have been the one to defeat her, and it still would have more or less had somewhat of the same message in the sense because she's also a student of Yusho, so
Oh
you
yeah,
know
it would have made perfect sense. It would have made perfect sense.
yeah, so it's just like another failed opportunity to use Alexis. Are they Asuka? But are they even going to use her at all? I really hope they at least use her. They only have to use her once to make her, seem relevant and make her win, to make her seem relevant. Because that's all we're waiting for. We just want one really where she beats somebody really important, not just a couple scrub duels, but somebody actually important. She just needs one duel. There's still a little bit of time left, but it's like you haven't used her. What's going on? I have no idea, and it's kind of sad because it's like you brought her back from GX. We assumed to redeem her, and then at the same time they haven't really done that. They haven't redeemed her at all because she hasn't really done much, even in Arc V either. So it's like she's following more or less the same thing that she did in GX. Because I know you've talked a lot about that, how Asuka basically dipped in GX a lot, and Arc 5. I get a little complaint that I say Arc V instead of Arc 5, but yeah, it's Arc 5. She wasn't utilized very well in GX at all, and that's kind of sad. They brought her back here, which I thought was an odd choice to bring her back anyway, but they did, so they might as well have done something with her character if they were going to bring her back. They did more with Edo, which is great, but yeah, so it's just disappointing. Hopefully we get to. I just want that in these last 30 episodes that every single character that's been pushed aside gets at least one shining moment. That means Yuzu, Gogenzaka, the girl. We're probably still gonna see Shindul one more time, obviously for her sister, which is fine. But yeah, there's still other characters. Gongenzaka, Sawatari, they've been kind of pushed aside, and they're both very strong duels with strong decks. I know you have your own doubts on that right now, but
Yeah.
they are strong. They're just unfortunately, whenever the writers are put in a situation where they have to toss aside some characters to show the strength of another character that they're bringing in, they're gonna pick certain characters, and unfortunately Gogenzaka and Sawatari are those type of characters that they're like, all right, let's throw them in there, make them lose to show the strength of these new guys that were like they did with the Tyler sisters. But they are very strong, and it's kind of sad that they're not getting the respect they deserve, because they are strong duelists. They had impressive moments. Yeah, Sawatari may not have had a win, but the duel he had with Yugo was really strong. Yugo barely touched Sawatari at all throughout that duel. It was only at the end that he actually finished him off. But throughout the duel, he barely touched him. If you rewatch that duel, he barely touched him at all. So he knows what he's doing. He's a smart duelist. He's a great entertainer as well. So I want to see them both duel, and Yuzu as well, because at this point she hasn't done much either, and I really want to see one really big moment for her.
Well,
Yeah.
let me tell you what Shingo Sawatari's crowning moment is going to be. It's going to be when Yuri sends him to death when he cards him in episode 127. I mean you know my stance on Shingo and Gongenzaka at this point. And yes, I probably will rewatch that duel because I don't remember much from it, to be honest, but I remember him and Yugo. It was an alright duel. The thing is, Yugo is another character that it just doesn't really interest me as much as the other three U boys. I'm not sure why. That doesn't mean I dislike Yugo, but he just doesn't I just find him to be very loud, and I don't know that kind of turns me off from him. But I'm still very excited to see him and Rin duel, and I think Shingo and Gangenzika are both going to be carded. And not even to be sarcastic, that could be a crowning moment. Like Bronk from Zexel, I forget what his original name was, but Yuma's best friend. One of his best moments, I thought, was when he lost to Rio in the Barry and Onslaught arc, and when he made that speech and everything and made an effort to try to get through to her. He obviously failed, and then he was killed. That, to me, when I think of Bronk, that was like a pretty solid moment for him. So even though, sometimes, sure, you get killed, and, when you look at it from that perspective, yeah, his best moment was when he got killed, but you can still produce a really good moment. Like, I like Dennis a lot more now because of what happened in 114. I think that adds a lot of dimension and character depth to show how torn he really was between these two ideals, and that he couldn't handle the pressure, and he had to card himself to escape that kind of fate. So, or to escape that kind of reality, I should say. So I think that getting carded could be important and maybe give characters some more development, even though, maybe some people will disagree with me there because it sounds stupid. I know. I mean, you're getting killed. How does that give you development? But I think the point I'm trying to make. And I think that Shingo and Gangenzaka are two characters that are going to get carded by the time this show is over.
Yeah, no, well, I definitely do agree with that. I think whenever they do death scenes in Yu-Gi-Oh, it kind of is always a big moment for almost any character. I mean, even, like you said, Bronk, who was Yuma's best friend, and I mean, he wasn't too relevant in the story, but yet that scene was still very impactful for him, one of his best scenes. And, I don't find it disrespectful if their best scene is when they lose, because if it's done right, then that's all that matters. So if Sawatari and Gogenzaka lose, I want and that's their redeeming moment, well, yeah, their redeeming moment where they lose, and, it's sentimental in this, because I love that stuff in Yu-Gi-Oh! Obviously, the end of Zexal was, like, incredibly impactful just because all these deaths, and it was just all done so well. And, but as long as I get to see a full duel of Sawatari and Gogenzaka, not together, but separately, where they each get a moment to shine, and ultimately in the end they weren't strong enough to defeat them, but you could see that they gave it their all, and they did some damage, and then ultimately they lose, and then they get carded and have that sentimental moment, and that'll be fine. But I don't want it to be like they just get carded like with the title systems, like we just come in and they already lost. We didn't see any of the duel at all. I don't want it to be like that. Give them the respect they deserve. At least give them a full duel where they lose with pride and then die with pride. That's how I feel about the situation.
Yeah, I can definitely agree with that. I thought it was kind of shallow for them not to have any moments against the Tyler sisters. They could have even shown the last turn of them losing. And I think that kind of just shows what the writers think of these two characters at this point, which is kind of a shame. But it's just, it is what it is at this point. But to your point, yeah, that would kind of be annoying if they just showed them get killed off and they don't even show the duel. If Shingo duels Yuri, which I think is going to happen, he's dueled all the other three U boys, then show the entire duel and make it a decent duel where Yuri maybe even barely pulls it out, and then card Shingo. I think that could be an emotional scene. And even though Shingo Sabatari, he didn't win a single duel, I guess he was there for comic relief and put up a good fight. I mean, that's I guess what it'll come down to.
Yeah, it is what it is. Unfortunately, there are some characters that are just written to lose a bunch of times. But, personally, for me, winning or losing doesn't really matter that much. Like I've said before in one of my other videos, it's not important who wins or loses. For me, it's like the content of the duel. The duel was amazing, and both duelists, did their very best, and they were, it was a back and forth duel, and it was a great duel. As long as the performance and everything in that duel was fantastic, I honestly don't really care who wins or loses, as long as it's a great show for me, and I'm enjoying it, and I see that it wasn't, it's a back and forth battle. Like, those are the things I love, in general. So that's how I feel about that. I guess that pretty much handles, unless you have something else maybe you're thinking of that you might want to mention. I'm not sure.
No, I'm pretty good. I think we discussed everything that we wanted to.
All right, perfect. All right, guys. So thank you guys for watching this podcast. We'll see you again next week for on his channel. This time he'll pick the discussion and the topic that we're going to discuss.
Yep.
Whatever that'll be. And I hope you guys enjoyed this. This was really fun to make. Discussing, who's gonna face a Caballero in the end. Will Reiji ever lose? All the possibilities that could happen. There's so many things that could happen. So write down below if you guys think any of our predictions were gonna happen, or if you have some other one that we didn't think about. But yeah, thank you guys for watching it. It was a lot of fun. Thank you guys for everything, and God bless you guys. Dylan, you want to say bye to the people?
Yeah, thank you guys for watching. Please comment down below. We love hearing from you guys. And Legendary Duels, thank you for having me on.
Sure, no problem. And please subscribe to Dylan from Clueless Gamers, as well as subscribe to his new channel, Yu-Gi-Oh! Everything, where he'll have the longer discussion videos there and the Q&As and all that other stuff. So definitely check him out, subscribe to him. And yeah, thanks for watching, guys. I appreciate it. Gotcha!